lectures, we're talking about dissolving the interface between computers and people. And often when you think about computers and people, you think about people as individuals sitting in front of some individual computer. But people are not like that at all, right? People are both individuals and members of people groups and members of civilizations. And in particular, when you think of people groups have things like cultures, right? So something that we've done very little of in computer science is think about the cultures that people are in when we're adapting machines to them. In fact, if you look at the way, say, Windows or Mac OS works here or in China or Vietnam or South America, it's pretty much the same with just translations. As computers become more and more intelligent, there's an opportunity to do something very different and have machines which actually have culture and are part of a culture. But we're not going to get there unless we have the ability for people from a wide variety of cultures to contribute to the development of those intelligent machines. And in Aotearoa in particular, we have an opportunity to do that. We have an opportunity and a need and a compulsion to do that particularly well. That's why I thought that it would be, we thought it would be interesting as part of this series to have Potaua Biasiny-Tule come and talk to us about Tikanga AI, how we can enable mātauranga Māori in our artificially intelligent machines in the future. So thank you. Please welcome Potaua.
He hōnare he krorea he maunga rongo ki te whenua e whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. He te atua, te whare e tūn nei, tēnā koe. Te papa e tākoto nei, tēnā koe. He korero tahi, tēnā koutou. E ngā hapu, e ngā whanau, te iwi, o nā ki whātua ki o rākau. Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. Tainui, e koro tū hei tea, e te kingi, te kauhui ariki, tēnā koutou. Mioki, nā pui nui tonu, tēnā koutou. I ngā mate, ki ngā mate, haere, haere, haere atura. E rauranga tira mā. Haramai. Haramai o nā kaupapa o te Gibbons. Te maunga o Rotorua nui a kahumata momoe kāmeta o ku whanau ko kia ora. Te whakatūwhera, te rangatira, Professor Michael Woodbrook, tēnā koe. Te whare wānanga o Tāmaki Makaurau, tēnā koutou. Arohāti. Hoi anō, he mihi poto, pa he kaupapa nui. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Tiro, tiro, hi taku tau. Kei ara, kei a. Kei runga ke, kei raro ke. Kei roto i toku moe moe a. Kia ora. Kia ora te whānau. Yeah, no, I'm freaking out, so aroha mai. I'd really like to take this opportunity to share our thoughts, ideas, challenges, and insights into the world. And I want to give a big mihi to Professor Michael Woodbrook to Professor Gil Dobby, D. June, and also to my bro up there, Hemi Edwards, who actually should be here speaking, but he's decided to kick me in, like, but kia mana, kia maia, kia mana unu. So my korero is kind of, I walk backwards to go forwards. So Tikanga AI for me is based on a couple of principles. Taonga tuki iho. These are the things that our ancestors, our gods have passed down to us. Taonga is the gift, and tuki iho is their passing down of the lineage. So when I first started my korero, I wanted to acknowledge our atua. And first I'm like, Papa Tuanuku, Rangi Nui, those my homies, and all of their tamariki who have really influenced who we are as Māori. And we got to just keep like acknowledging them, because without them we wouldn't be here. And then same with our tupuna, our grandparents, great-grandparents, their great-parents, all the way back, you know, everyone learned something so that I could be here today. The lived experiences. So what I'm going to be talking about is my lived experience. I'm a very different fella, but when some people see my story, they lived a similar experience, and those lived experiences is how I apply my tikanga. Mātauranga Māori, those are again all the gifts that are given from the gods, and it's the revelation to humans. No one is born fully formed, but over time things are revealed to you, and if you're in touch with your different atua, your different tupuna, those revelations come at the time and the place when you're best suited for that. And for me, Mātauranga Māori means so many things. I'll keep going. And Māori knowledge systems. The Mātauranga Māori is a Māori knowledge system. It's a living Māori knowledge system. And as kaitiakitanga, that's my responsibility to look after all of these things that I've just explained. And reciprocal sharing. Aroha atu, aroha mai. I think in a modern capitalist world, we forget that. It's all transactional and extractive, so if you share something, it's nice to get something shared back. And in the modern age, Māori have shared a lot, but we've gotten very little in return. So these with every positive, there's a negative. But these are the founding principles that my talk will be covering. So I was born in a Pōtiki a couple of weeks back. But between a Pōtiki, so I'll start with my mother is Karen Rakuraku, and she is from Waimana, and also from Ngāti Whakaui and Ngāti Pikia, in the shores of Rotorua, Lake Rotiiti, all the way through. And my father is Ngāti Pikia and Niuean. So whakalofa lahi atu, Niuean whanau, on the live stream, what? But these three places, Pōtiki, Waimana in the centre, that's Tana Marae, and on the left, Pikia, that's Te Takinga Marae. So Te Takinga, Tana, and a Pōtiki. So when I was young growing up, these were three of the major influences in my life. Our parents would drag us to the marae, help with the kai, help with putting out the mattresses, help putting out, because my dad had 5 sons and 3 daughters, he had a mobile army. So we would just go from marae to marae, helping wherever we could. And while we were doing all the work, we would spot that there's a difference between the front of the marae and the back of the marae. And in the back of the marae, there was a hierarchy, because the cooks would always place the menu and everyone would follow. And then kai would come. People would be bringing koha kai from all over the Marakai. And so being able to be a part of that was, you take it for granted, but being a part of that was magic. And then at the front of the house, that's where the pai, the sacred, for us it's the sacerdotal connection between the unseen and the seen. That's how my brother Kingi explains it to me. And the pai can see both worlds. They can see what they see, but they can also know things that are unknown. And for me, as a little kid, it's just mind-blowing to know those kinds of concepts exist in this little carved house. So our tikanga, much like AI, has no one fixed interpretation. While the words signal the concept, the philosophies and applications are different, no matter where you go. My tikanga for Ngāti Pikia is very different from my tikanga in Tanatana. The Te Arawa have a way of doing things, much like Tūhoi have a way of doing things, much like Whakatohea have a way of doing things. So when people say there's a tikanga for one thing, you will be a bit cautious about that. Always question who's saying that. Like I hope some people are here to question me, but bro, what tikanga AI? No such thing. You can't bring this modern technology and our traditional knowledge together. Well, that's what I'm here to try. That's why I'm nervous, because I might get shot. But in the background, I was raised in 1980s Rotorua. And so we had full employment all the way up until 84. And then we had half employment. And then by 87, all of our dads had been fired. The government had decided to get rid of the forests, get rid of the railroad, and pretty much destroyed our whole community. And so that idyllic 70s that I went through became this in the 80s. And so that's me. No. But anyone that saw that movie and lived that life, when you watched it for the first time, you weren't shocked or surprised. It was like, okay, it's life affirming. Someone actually looked, they pulled the curtains and took a look into our lives back then. But what they didn't do was they compressed 15 years of our life into a 1.5 hour movie. And at the end, it still kind of was like, for us, that movie never stopped. It just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And so these kazis in Waimana went Mongol mob. And then where I lived in Ford Block in Rotorua went Black Power. So for a whole decade, these became my role models. Crazy. I still got love for the bros, all good for that. But I'll come back about this, because that's kind of disturbing, but what I'm seeing today is it's deja vu and the gangs are getting bigger. And it's because of poverty. Anyway, we'll come here. So for 20 years, my 4 brothers and 3 sisters would follow our parents across the bay. And then we'd watch on the marae how the role of engagement, the rituals and encounters would always be adhered to. No matter if there was just a small group or a big group, there was always the karanga. And there was, for special occasions, there was a kaiwero. So the karanga is the ancestral call from all of our female, all our essence as a wahine comes through with our kuia, and typically the oldest and typically the knowledge holder, this is who we are. This is our ancestors and our gods are speaking this language to you. But now who are you? And so we'd sit there just watching karanga versus karanga, and then karanga combine into a single karanga, and then the final home karanga will just bring everyone in. It's fascinating to watch. And then the kaiwero would jump out, he'd be the sentinel, he'd be issuing the challenge. And you could see him run to the front to greet the group, issue the challenge, because usually they're the best fighter. And if in the old days, you would step over the taki. Today, you pick it up as a sign with open hands. But in the old days, if you picked it up, that means you're going to war. So the traditional wero is very different from the contemporary wero, but because our landscape is different, we don't live nomadically like we used to. We live in set locations. Google can find our marae. So what we have to do is adapt our traditions to make people feel welcome. And so the kaiwero would happen, the karanga would happen, and then people would either, on some marae, you meet outside, and that's where the rituals. In front of the marae is the area of war. That's the te atia or te mātauranga. And if you have a big angry issue, take it to the front of the house. And if you have like an intimate issue or a small kaupapa or something that needs to be thought about, take it inside the house. So these boys, I was just a little kid. I was kind of like a little gangster kid growing up being a Māori, not knowing what was going on. For me, there was not enough context and there weren't enough people explaining my experiences. So we just had to live it.
this is where my head was. So I wanted to be not One Two Warriors, I wanted to be the Jetsons. And I wanted to hang out with my bro Metal Mickey. Who remembers Metal Mickey? Yes, fine, yeah. And I wanted to be the last starfighter. Because all of these, sometimes it's escapism, but also it's like, hey, there's a different way from just going down this path to this gang or going this way into this gang. So what we did as kids is we used to hang out at the arcade. Every town had a Spaceys place, and Rotorua we had 5. But Auckland had e-farms. So Auckland had like the matua of all the spacey arcades in all of New Zealand. But the last staff, when I was living in a caravan park in Whakatane, the last starfighter was a kid who got high score on a game in a caravan park and got picked up and going, I think he had to fight the Korana Mara. And then, so you're sitting as a little kid just watching this and going, hey, that could be me. I'm going to get into whatever he's getting into, spaceys. So I kind of used that to propel my own geeky knowledge. At that stage, I was good at hacking these. I could tick spacey games because you could just go on there with either, when you're delivering newspapers, you get that blue string, you just break that and then use it as a ticking wire. And then when we needed to call home, who knew how to tap the public phones? You just tap the phones. So heaps of us knew how to tap the phones. And then when the first computer came to our high school, we managed to hack in because the username admin, password admin, and just give ourselves unlimited photocopying. So we were doing tech things in our world that we didn't know they were tech things, we were just being kids, just being tutus. Between being a tutu and now, I somehow managed to find myself trying to be a chef. I can't cook. Then I went to Waikato University to attend Te Timatanga Hau, and that place really opened my eyes. The Te Tare Māori was so embraced. The student population coming from Rotorua, when there's only just a few of us, to like Hamilton, there's the big spoke. And just all of these brainy students who kind of had big dreams. I'd never come from a place with big dreams. And at Waikato, I also learned the socialising aspects. I spent a lot of time in H Block at the Hilly. Go the Hilly, older my man. But you'd spend a lot of time in class at the student union and hanging out with other students, drinking. And somewhere along there, I started to realise I might be in the wrong place. So I packed up my kit and went to live with my kawa down in Christchurch. So he was at Teachers College at the time and said, boy, you might be a good teacher. Okay, interesting. I didn't go to school, I wagged a lot. I was playing spaceys. And then my grandmother said, she spotted me reading the newspaper. I was like, hey, what are you doing that for? It's like, I'm trying to figure out what's happening. She goes, why don't you go to university and do political science? Okay, what's a political science? Well, first, what's a uni? And so I spent a couple of years working at Hamilton Jet. Hamilton Perry, they made massive jet boats down in Christchurch. And I kind of saw innovation with those jet boats, but I was working in the powder coating room, so I was like, oh, cool jet boats. And then I went to Waikato University to start my political science degree. After 3 years of political science, philosophy, it's where I met my wife, Nicolasa. We realised that once we graduated, there weren't enough jobs for all of us. Maybe 600 graduated at the same time. And in my class, there were 30. So I thought, oh, shucks, there's not going to be enough room for all of us. So we decided to go to South Korea. And that's a little bit bigger than Rotorua. We went to South Korea actually via the Himalayas. So we got to see Mount Everest and Sangamata. Chongmalungma, I got to see, I always give knowledge to my mountain. Nongataha is the mountain I wake up and see every morning, And then to see Mount Everest when we woke up one morning, it was just mind-blowing. And mountains are tall, but she was so tall that she leaned, and she actually, the sky was here, but she leaned beneath the sky. Can you imagine that? And when you're looking there, she doesn't look like the tallest mountain. But the further back you go, you can see that she starts to rise and rise. And so, went up there. First thing I did was cried, karakia haka. That's a Māori response. I don't know if anyone else does that, but I'm like, and the monks were just sitting there watching me because they could see what I was doing. They're like, chemapo, go hard. But even, and then we went to India. But everywhere we went, there was email. This was back in 1999. So email was ubiquitous in India and Nepal in 1999. And so I thought, that's pretty cool, because it wasn't really in Rotorua. And so when we moved to South Korea to teach little kids, I was just doing Sesame Street meets play school. You know, how do you teach kids? You just do it. And we saw that the digital transformation had arrived in Seoul. So the South Korean government had decided to put fibre throughout the entire peninsula years before anyone else did. But I think they anticipated the industry was going to make something of it. Instead, the kids did. So we had one PC cafe, PC one per block. And then because the internet just boomed, all the kids were playing StarCraft. We just started playing Diablo 2. Then it went a PC cafe every floor. And then it was just major PC cafes everywhere. So the kids were the ones that made the internet explode. And then LG, and then Samsung. But we just saw this. All it took was access to the internet, a decent device, and you could do anything. And so Nicholas and I, my wife and I, came home 2002, and we thought, we're going to do great things in this country. And when we landed, the Prime Minister at the time had talked about the knowledge wave, and how New Zealand, we're going to get on the knowledge wave. And we thought, we're here at the right time, the digital wave, the knowledge wave, and then nothing happened. And for the last 19 years, we've been waiting for that knowledge wave and digital transformation wave to happen. I think actually COVID last year accelerated us. It made everything digital ubiquitous in New Zealand. All ages really loved being able to connect. All ages, you had to connect. From the elders talking to their grandkids, from the kids having to go get remote lessons. Everyone had to connect. For the first time, we weren't just being asked to fix laptops. We were asked to do something. But what we saw in South Korea was that transformation and the cultural integrity. Because the Koreans, they knew they didn't want to be like the Japanese, and they didn't want to be like the Chinese. They wanted to be staunchly Korean. And I thought, can you bring your culture into this world? I didn't quite understand the Americanization of culture at that stage, the Americanization of tech at that stage too. So it was quite an eye-opener to see Indians did Indian tech, South Koreans did South Korean tech. And I came home wondering, can Māori do Māori tech? And when I asked that back on the marae, the old people said, "Ka, kete." Because anything new has to be investigated and has to be discussed. And if we don't like it, we don't adopt it. And often those people who are trying to influence us are just there to take our money or take our land or to date my sister, which gets my money and my land. But we always are quite cautious about new technology. And so we kind of suffered in silence, and instead of getting mad, we went away to do our own thing. We created Digital Natives Academy, and this is where we inspire the next generation of digital leaders. Because when we were kids, we were just having fun. But imagine if we could have structured fun. If we could learn, but have on the tuku panel, and go into a marae, and you have whakarongo, the carvings, and you have tuku panels. And in those tuku panels, there's one in particular, Potaua, the steps to heaven. And as you're learning, you're progressing your knowledge. But then once you've learned, you come back to teach down the other side. And so these things were instilled in us, and we needed it to be instilled in the new generation. So over the last 10, 15 years, we've been developing our own ecosystem. Because just to open a business or just to open a charitable trust is not enough. You have to have, like a forest, you have to be as wide as a forest and as deep in a forest and as tall as a forest, but you have to have your definite borders. And so we created a Digital Natives Academy for the kids, and then realized that once the kids get these skills, they need a place to work and to belong. So we created Digital Basecamp next door. And then as the kids got going, they love gaming. So we created Natives Esports to get them going. And all the while, Lassa and I had been doing websites for our tribe. So in 2004, the Central North Island came to an agreement with the Crown. And 11 of our iwi decided that we need to settle past our historical grievances and start working together and working to the future. So the 9 tribes in the Central North Island created a settlement plan, but each tribe had communications, and they had to have networking, and they had to have a website. So we were there at the right time. We managed to build our own website, which was tangatawhenua.com. And then from tangatawhenua.com, we were able to create 300 other websites, in particular around iwi capacity databases, around hauora, the health sector, around the education initiatives, and then around connecting the tribal base. So in our tribe in Aotearoa, we have, I like to say, 50,000 of us. 1,000 years ago, 100 of us came on the love boat, Te Arawa Waka, and today there's 50,000 of us, so there was lots of love. But we don't know each other. You know, the last 50 years we've been spreading out throughout the world, and we've kind of lost connection to our own whakapapa. So the job of the tribe was to reconnect its membership and to communicate what we were doing in this field. If you're an entrepreneur geek, you can make $1 million. That's something that I learned after we came back from Korea. We realized this is a big money. You know, tech is going to be huge. There's going to be lots of money. And then we couldn't see Māori in that space. But then when the tribe came through with all of the settlement processes, there was lots of money to be had making websites and databases and social media. And so by doing it well once, we were able to offer it to every tribe who needed a website and every tribe who needed a database. And we were dealing with a monopoly, to be honest. No one even knew that this market existed. I still don't think anyone realizes that Māori are worth $68 billion. You know, we're still stuck in... People still think we're this, when we're actually some of the most powerful entities in New Zealand. But because maybe racism is just convenient, makes us just insular. Yeah. And then our friends at Spark came along and they said, we really love what you do. So the Spark Foundation have been able to provide resources for for Digital Natives Academy because there is no other funding available for anything we do. The government had a kawa fund. A group of Māori geeks met in Rotorua back in like 2015, and we were asking for access to the 2G, 3G spectrum. It would help our language flourish. And the government said, no, Māori and 2G, 3G, get out of here. So what they did was they gave us money. And they'd actually forgotten that we'd started 2 degrees using spectrum. So I want to mihi to Tex and all the whanau from Te Huarahi Tika Trust and to Hautaki. Māori had a real opportunity to create our own telco, but we just didn't have that $50 million to get that next lift. It's crazy. So the Kāhau Fund was a $13 million compromise between the Māori tech industry and the national government. And it was going to be distributed $5 million per year for 5 years. And it was just like a startup fund, a seed funding, because there was nothing for Māori in this space. They still thought that Māori either had gumboots or Māori did kapahake concert. And every time we talked about anything digital, people would like put up walls and say, you know, you can't do it. We're from New Zealand. We're too small, we're too far away. Or you're from a rural community, you don't even have decent internet. It's like, oh, I don't care about that. Where there's a will, there's a way. So when Spark came along to help us, it also helped Riot come along. So our kids have been playing League of Legends for, Russell still plays, actually. Any League of Legends players? Yes. Yeah. For us, it was just a way. When we were in space, when we played Spaces in the arcades, we all got together and we had fun. But then when the PlayStation and Nintendo came, we all had to go home. And so that social aspect kind of got lost. But then connected with the internet, we found each other again. So we were all making, our old friends, we'd all play again, but then we'd find new friends. And what we wanted to do was encourage more big companies to come down and invest their time, their effort, and their resources into our local kids. So it was cool to be with Riot. And because we'd done all of this work, and we'd worked with the tribes making websites, some of the elders from the other iwi came over to us and said, could you help us make a DNA in Aotearoa? So up Manawarere, Ngāti Manawa, part of their settlement package was to create an educational facility for their community with digital resources to help their rangatahi. So in a community of 3,000, they were looking for new options for their kids. So for the last 12 months, we've been developing, helping their hapu and their whanau in Murupara create their own digital hub. And what we've done with one, we've been able to do with Opotiki and Te Whakatohea, and also we're hoping to have one in Rotorua. Because for us, it's like, why not have a digital hub in every community? Why not have some educational and some entertainment and all the resources in one spot in each community? And then the final one, what we're working on at the moment, is native industries. Because we need digital skills and digital training, but it needs to be stackable with micro-credentials. And with on-the-job training and to get rangatahi for us in the retail space, Mighty Ape, we need a new Mighty Ape because I'm a racist, hardcore racist, and I feel like if New Zealand doesn't fight for its own, then we might lose out. And when I saw Mighty Ape, it sold to China, I thought, Australia, even worse, even worse. First they give us poisonous snakes and then they take our Mighty Ape. Anyway, for us, we saw the opportunity to take all these kids, help make computers, maybe a $1,000 computer or a $2,000 computer, and then sell it to families. But you don't just get the computer, you get the ability to learn, because digital literacy in our country is horrendous. This was our first iteration of Digital Natives Academy, DNA. There was one small room with recycled tech, couple from the council, couple from a bank, and a couple from the dump. Yeah, go to the dump. And in here we taught kids an hour of code, Minecraft, and it was mostly just the space to be, because we found that kids didn't have, besides skateboard parks, netball parks, rugby, besides the jockey things that all the jocks get, geeky kids had nothing. We don't give any kid that likes tech or like drones or robotics, you don't get that exposure. We're discouraged from putting our hands and having experiences with these things in common places. So this was our first effort. We upgraded by helping right here, that one there. NZQA helped us commission a small project to get rangatahi into robotics. So that's the Lego Mindstorms. And in this corner, we worked with Anna Dean, Chelsea Winstanley, and Taika. So that was Boy, way up in the corner. And our auntie Merita Mita had come to us one day and she said, "Boy, did you used to do that pānui?" Like, "What pānui?" "We used to receive this thing called rangi kāinga, every week." And I was like, "Oh, shucks." In 2002, we started a small e-pānui. And it was just like a newsletter with 5 positive messages about being Māori. Because you couldn't find much on the internet about positive Māori experiences besides tourists. So in 2002, we sent out the small pānui, called it rangi kāinga, because your papa kāinga is for the earth, so rangi kāinga must be for the sky. Made sense then. And that was our next t-shirt. But with rangi kāinga, we sent out our first email to maybe 12 people. By the next one, it went to 30 people. And by the first month, we were up to 1,200. By the first year, we were up to 24,000. And by year 10, we had 80,000 on our database. So our rangi kāinga had made its way all the way over to America. And they'd come back, and Auntie Merita was talking to us about, how do we get this guy famous? It's like, which guy? Like, I've got a young actor, director called Taika Waititi. No one knows him. And he wants to take this movie, Boy, and like show the world who he is. So along with the team, we created a campaign with Boy and the Crazy Horses. Where's your horses? We managed to do the social media team before social media was a thing. And so Taika went from Boy to what we do in the shadows to Hunt for the Wilder People, all using innovative social media techniques. He had no funding for budget, but he got $1 million worth of marketing exposure. And what we managed to do out of it is get some posters and some t-shirts out of it. And that's another thing, if you're a techie, you do a lot for free, and that reciprocity, sometimes they give you a t-shirt, sometimes they give you a book. That's dope ass. And the story, because I didn't know Taika either. We saw him as an actor years ago, but to see where he is right now, and to know we were kind of part of his story way back then, that's just cool. That's just bragging rights, you know? Clout. And this is what we grew into. So we went from a small room with recycled tech, and then with the Kahau Fund, we were able to develop 20 computers, and just, it's like Disneyland for kids. The kids just come in. It's a little bit like a geek bedroom. It's like my bedroom, but all my friends can come. And so in here, we were able to capture their imagination, hold their attention, and engage them in tech. We did this for 2 years in this location. And some of the things we learned from here is a hub is more like a sanctuary, because some of the kids are coming from the same place I was coming from, the gang life, or they were coming from rural communities who didn't have access to tech. So if they could walk into a place like this that respected their mana, but also didn't charge them. Because PC Cafe is $3 an hour, $5 an hour, that's not too bad. But if you don't have $3 or $5, then that's... So we wanted to bring down all the obstacles for any kid who wanted to get engaged down. What it allowed us to do is create big teams like this. This is for the League of Legends scrim. That we had all these teams, and this is our Sasha, who was the head of our Wahine League of Legends tournament. Boys were incredibly salty and toxic, so Wahine have their own tournament, and we tautoko wherever we can. But new leadership rises in that space. It's not just dominated by the same old. And then get the kids coming in, real little kids. Like when we were little,
we only had one TV and one phone. And mum controlled one and dad controlled the other. But today everyone's got their own devices. So it's nothing for a 3-year-old to unlock an iPhone. And that's just amazing. So why aren't we teaching literacy to tamariki? Why aren't kids experiencing these devices, really interactive devices at a young age? There's still cultural cringe around tech, and that Kiwi should be traditionalist and we should be only thinking about certain things. Well, I disagree. The kids are already there, so it makes us look like dinosaurs if we keep saying no. Yeah. And then all the good deeds are rewarded by bringing everyone to Armageddon. Armageddon! It's because kids don't, we're surrounded by hardworking foresters or hardworking tourism people, but we're not really we're not surrounded by creatives. We're not surrounded by techies. We're not surrounded by cosplayers. So that's, again, it's just another experience for our kids that we didn't get as kids. To our fourth iteration. So our koro Toby Curtis wants to send his regards. I know he was an alumni here, and he offered us this whakatauki. Te rākau tapu o Hawaii no tērā taha o tā whitinui e, ko te kuru whakamarumaru o te whare o Uanuku, he Aotearoa. That's his korero from in our traditional homeland of Hawaii. There was a house of learning, Uanuku, and if you came under the whakamarumaru, the korua, the shadow of this house of learning, you would gain understanding. And in the Māori cosmology, we go through 3 phases. We go through first te kore, that's the nothing, the potential being. Then we go into te pō, which are the realms of dark, of night, of shadow. And then we come into te ao marama. And it's only in the ao marama when knowledge, when the light awakens, that's when knowledge is received. When your head's all chaotic, not enough sleep or something, it's hard to think. Or when you're in the dark about a subject, it's really hard to find that knowledge. But once the spark goes off, that spark was the beginning of our existence. And as Aotearoa, we have to constantly keep the spark of our primary ancestor Puhaurangi alive. So that's our obligation, to keep the spark alive. I feel like our transformer, the ore spark. And in our new space, we love to just bring the rural kids together for gaming tournaments, schools together to upgrade their knowledge, and especially with teachers. The teachers have been forced to do digital curriculum 1, 2, and 3, but are only given set hours around their professional development. And so sometimes you have a knowledgeable kid and an unknowledgeable teacher, and they're, oh my gosh, the teachers come to us and are like, help! And what we do is we take a childlike approach. So first bring your kids here, and we'll have 15 minutes of gaming, and then we'll talk about digital well-being, about how te whare tapawha, and how inside your being are 4 elements that we need to look after and protect. And then once you've gone through that, then you can learn animation, learn coding, or esports. And esports is like the gateway into tech. Once the kids love the mouse and the connection, they want to start editing and get up on Twitch, or they want to start talking and get on Discord. But when you start giving medals, then shit gets serious. See, yeah, I think they won. So this was a tournament between Galatea, Murupara, Te Rangi Haka. These are schools that traditionally don't do anything tech, but their schools decided just to jump in there. And what we do is we come halfway. We bring our enthusiasm and our resources, but they've got to bring their whole self. This is the Pōtiki Digital Hub. So how I describe things in Rotorua do not work in Pōtiki.
There are different landscape, different rules, different history, different way of doing things. And so tikanga is really dependent on the location. That's why when we were talking about the New Zealand AI Charter yesterday, and I thought an AI Charter for all of Aotearoa and a strategy for AI for all of New Zealand and a tikanga for all of, tricky. When you start doing a tikanga for all of the country, the North Islanders might make it and the South Islanders will say no. Or a particular tribe might be the ones that put it forward and another tribe might say no. You've got to have this. If you don't have something that we all see and a common vision and an opportunity for us all to participate in this decision making, then there's going to be a bit of conflict. So for me, tikanga is about working with the community of the land. Just because I live in Rotorua, it doesn't mean that I have license to do everything in Rotorua. Each tribe has their own particular nuance, and each marae has its own set of tikanga and kawa. So that's why I was like, for me, Tikanga AI is an amazing opportunity set with its own challenges. But for me, I'm just describing a few ways that we've been able to live an experience, make sure that our values are intact, and then come out with digital natives has our tikanga. Digital Basecamps have our tikanga. Well, for Murupara, Marcus also came from South Korea. He was born in Stratford. And his passion is around encouraging senior leadership in game. He likes anime. He would love to see more games being made in New Zealand, especially Māori games. So he's working on a couple of projects with different teams. Digital inclusion and digital skills. So access, trust, motivation, and skills. These are something that have been pretty, you've got to take it serious and from our point of view because the parents are the ones that are holding us to account. See, we can have all the gaming with the kids we like, but if there's no access and if there's no sense of trust, if the skills are lacking, if we're just going there to have fun, we just have fun. But are there digital skills that we could put into our kete to help us over the next few years? And motivation. And I want to mihi to our whanau here from AUT. We just did a report on digital cultural artifacts, and the same issue came up. Trust, access, motivation, and skills, but especially around trust. With Māori, you can gain our trust, and then how do we share that? So, and then some of the programs we developed are tutu labs, because we're hau tutus, we love the tutu, so why not have a lab? Te iwi matahiko, that's our digital tribe. Content creation, animation, illustration, esports, and digital well-being. Now we have to do this because a lot of the schools are closing down their digital suites, their computer suites. A whole bunch of high schools have shut down their computer suites over the last 12 months. It's been kind of building. We thought we could develop it into something, but a lot of the high schools are just shutting them down. Well, if you can find them, we'll help you. But also, a lot of the kids are just getting Chromebooks. And the ability to create on a Chromebook is limited. It's browser-based. It's really just for Google Classrooms. But you need something a bit gruntier to be able to create content or to be able to play these games. This is an event we have coming up, Get Into Gaming. It's for, it's a Ministry of Education, and all of us geeks have finally teamed up to do something positive. Esports is not in the curriculum, yet all our kids do it. It's so strange. So what we're trying to do is encourage the Ministry of Education to just see the educational value in the teamwork and skill development that esports bring. And native industries, that's a lot happening. But essentially, how do we create a next generation workforce? The future of work is already here. After COVID crashed our economy, we should have had the engine firing up, but we're still talking about the future of work at mayoral forums or at think tanks when we should have been, those jobs should have been created already. So I'm really here to kind of apply a bit of pressure to university students with amazing ideas. Some of those ideas are for you. Yep, cool, that's what we do. But there's one or two ideas that can be really, how do I say it? Commercialized, but localized. And so your idea could be the one that hires 1,000 young techies. We don't have enough of those. Websites, we can hire 12. But what's that big idea that could hire 10,000 of us? Because did you know that, there's a lot of unemployed techies as well. Wow. I thought we were part of $1 trillion business. I thought we would, Anyway. If I could AI, I would hit the ideas of poverty, connectivity, and sustainability. Poverty is man-made, so it can be un-man-made. Maybe we need a smart computer to help us because people keep stuffing it up. Connectivity, 5G. Our kids are already talking 5G. And the problem with last year was 5G was discussed at a negative level. 5G and the COVID. COVID and the 5G are going to get Bill Gates to put a vaccine in me, all that. So our communities were talking about 5G, but from a really negative perspective. And I bet you if your family were part of that korero, it's really hard to convince them now. So we have to actually let a little bit of water go through and find a new way for connectivity to come back into everyday conversations. And finally, did you know that climate change is real? Oof. I was in America not too long ago and they were like, no, it's not. Yeah, they wouldn't say that now. But we're going to feel it way more than everyone else. But I still don't feel like we've used technology to the best of our ability. And I've talked to lots of friends and family and it's still dystopian. AI is still a dystopian subject at the grassroots level because no one has given us many AI good news stories. Could anyone answer me, what has AI helped Māori? How has AI helped Māori recently? You might, yeah, that's right. So, for me, the cultural interface is one thing, but the cultural benefit is another. We've had lots of technologies come through our community, and we've had lots of people extract our knowledge and our talent, but we've had very little reciprocated back. And if AI could be helped to save our planet, to connect us all, and so we're not so broke, hate being broke, yeah, in $1 trillion industry we're broke, then if I could AI, I would really tackle those three. And I'm just kind of saying I can't, but I think if we could work with others who could help our kids, then over the next 3 to 5 years, we might have something that at least touches one of those areas. But after all of my experiences, you've just got to choose a couple of things and just go for it. And then one of them becomes something and you just keep going for it. Just keep doubling up and doubling up. But so long as your community are involved, your elders are there to protect you, and the young people are there for that succession. Because if everyone's not on board, then at some stage it's going to just end, and it's a fun project, but that's it. Can we do things long-term and sustainably? And then, if I could AI, after yesterday's korero, I was thinking, pessimistically, Māori are not going to be involved in AI. Other groups are going to take all the resources. Small groups in boardrooms are going to convince government that they're the ones that are going to run it, and AI will be just done to us. Realistically, after what I saw yesterday, there was a good representation of Māori voices. But it still felt like we're waiting for the government to give us permission. And if we're an AI industry, which we should call ourselves, we should just do something. And then the government will catch up. If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. But realistically, I saw lots of momentum happening yesterday. But optimistically, I would love to see our next generation be AI fluent. Fluent in te reo, fluent in English, fluent in AI. But for me, those are like easy things to say. I've got kids, I want them to do that. But if I keep saying it to them, they'll start believing it. And if I keep introducing them to people who make that a reality, then they'll be it. Because we don't have enough role models in our society who talk about AI, who talk about the positivities of digital. So I'm just a dude from the block who's actually kind of tried my best with what I've got. But then as I've gotten older, I realize one of us can't do it, but all of us can. And it makes for the dream to work, we need the team to work. And we've just recently had the team of 5 million. Go team. Can the team of 5 million now look into AI? And how? So kia ora for my ramble. Aroha mai. Cheers. Any questions? Oh, not cool down there.
Some of the digital information, is any of that being, the Marae's here, or the hapu or holding, is any of that, are they deciding to use that to get the government to, I was thinking, I couldn't help it, I know it's in around all that, but I couldn't help thinking about how, when you said that the data that they're holding, how that might.
Yeah, that's right. When we first started websites for each iwi, we had to use the computer. Cloud wasn't around at that stage. So a lot of our data was lost because the computers got broken. And now that we're in cloud, we don't have our own capacity to store it locally. So we go to AWS or we go to third parties. Dātaranga tiratanga is huge because we've lost so much of our knowledge. But the iwi leaders group is developing a program where they can have data storage and cloud capacity. But as a geek, I would rather the whanau owns that. So if there was a Māori cloud company and some Māori SaaS companies, then I'd rather give them my money. I'd give them my money and then look after my data. And then if there's a Aotearoa data centre, and then a Whakatohia data centre and a Tūhoi data centre, that would make me happy because first, all of our data is held locally. And then there's backups. If Aotearoa's go down, then we've got redundancy in Whakatohia. And then second, we could have our indigenous communities have their own data centres, virtual or otherwise, so we could have an indigenous network of data. But we could have an indigenous data sovereignty network, but we're still facing challenges locally. But yeah, dātaranga tira needs to be in the hands of the whanau so that they can share with their hapu, who then can share with the iwi. At the moment, the iwi is getting all of the information, and sometimes that's for economic purposes. So how do we empower whanau to get the tools and the training to look after and analyse our own data? Yeah, I don't know. I still like the whanau data, but the realities are at scale, it's going to be the iwi. And Māori data, back to the interpretations. Some want to hold it themselves, and others want to build relationships with international corporations. So, yeah, I'm an activist, and so you either go from 100% tino, where we build it ourselves and do it ourselves and hold it ourselves, or we look at a treaty of Waitangi relationship, because that treaty partnership allows us to engage with our sovereignty, to work with our resources, our taonga, and to have equity and to be treated as a digital citizen. with all of the responsibilities and rights that it affords. And we also have the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. So that gives us an international forum to voice these concerns, that museums have our taonga, that the government has our taonga, that Google have our taonga. But then once we've voiced that, what are we going to do next? The iwi, the whanau and the hapu are looking for ideas, in all honesty. So if you can come up with some great ideas, yeah, love to hear them. And remember, I'm teaching the kids, so if you give us ideas, we go back and talk to the kids, so we can just grow it. And hopefully some of our rangatahi come to University of Auckland to be able to do things. And to go to whichever place, to go to whichever institute they feel, that they feel like they can be respected and they feel like they can be valued and they feel like they can be productive.
So 5 past, I'm not sure how long before they kick us out of the lecture theatre, but I do have one last sort of piece of ceremony to do where traditionally, we thank you for speaking. We hand over a bottle of good old Kiwi wine.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do that. And there is kind of like a recipe, but that's more for if you're going to create a non-profit in your community. So
we have food and drink outside afterwards. So now, so if people would like to talk one-on-one with Potaua here, now's your opportunity to do so.
And can I do the typical Ngāti Whakawe thing and bless the food from here? Yeah. Nau mai e nau hoi hora nei hara mai nā e koe, te whakatupu ānuku, te whakatupu ārangi, tawhia kia rehua, kia tamanui ki te ao marama.